This is Feminist Wellness, and I'm your host, nurse practitioner, functional medicine expert, and life coach, Victoria Albina. I'll show you how to get unstuck, drop the anxiety, perfectionism, and codependency so you can live from your beautiful heart. Welcome, my love. Let's get started. Hello, hello, my love. I hope this finds you doing so well. When I'm recording this, but not when you're listening to it, but when I'm recording it, it's the official 2-month anniversary of my birthday. Now, I am a Leo. Leos, as you know, are generally pretty birthday-obsessed humans. My birthday historically has been quite challenging, and this year was it was a rough one. For lots of reasons I'm not going to go into, but it was a rough one. And my friends and my Billy, my partner, all rallied and took really good care of me, but it was very emotional. It's a really challenging one. And maybe I'll do a show about birthdays and why they're challenging. But for now, I was thinking that I would really like a birthday present from you. And it's this. Head on over to where you get your podcasts and leave a written review and a 5-star rating for the show. Subscribe to it, follow it, share it on your social media, share it with a friend. It really helps to get the show into more people's ears. Making this show every week takes up so much of my time, costs so much money, and I do it because I'm so dedicated. I'm so mission driven, which sounds like corporate and but whatever. I suffered for so long. We're about to get into it in just a second, but I suffered for so long with emotional outsourcing and couldn't get help. Didn't see the way to live my life more differently. And I have been so privileged to study psychology and public health and somatic experiencing and sensory motor psychotherapy and to be a master certified coach, which was also very expensive. And I want to share all of this knowledge with everyone who wants it. So you leaving a rating and a review helps bump the show up in search, which means more people find it, which means more people get free help. So please help me help the people. I don't really think of myself as helping people. I'm not really out here in that kind of a colonialist framework. People are helping themselves. I'm simply providing material, but you know what I mean. So please, in honor of the 2-month anniversary of my birthday, which is also the 10-month anniversary of my birthday eve. Would that be? It's my 10-month birthday eve. Yeah, that's pretty cool. Anyway, rating and review, share on social, tag me, please and thank you, at Victoria Albina Wellness. Okay, with that aside, I'll also say that I am quite surprised to be recording this episode for you today because I talk about this subject, which is overfunctioning, with my clients Anchored in the somatic studio, my one-on-one clients. We talk about this or some manifestation of this literally every single actual for realsies day, because overfunctioning is such a core part of emotional outsourcing, which, if you're new around here, welcome, is codependent, perfectionist, and people-pleasing habits. We talk about that under the umbrella term of emotional outsourcing. And overfunctioning is this thing that all of us who are emotional outsourcing kind of humans, we all do it. And so I'm going to be really real with you, and this is hilarious to me. I was about 127.43% sure, but totally sure, that I had covered this topic about 3.5 years ago here on Feminist Wellness. I totally thought it was long ago recorded because I hear myself talk about it so much. And then someone wrote in to me and my team on Instagram at Victoria Albina Wellness and asked if I had something on this topic. Meow, 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 meow. I was chagrined to find out that I did not. And now we shall rectify this grave error in rememberation with this week's episode on overfunctioning. That old family favorite. We're going to do what nerds do. We're going to describe the problem, talk about why we are this way, how it shows up, and F's with our relationships, and of course, what to do with it in your life and the life of those you love. Let us start with a story. Once upon a time in a bustling city, there lived a woman named Carolina. Carolina's journey into overfunctioning began in her childhood, as these things often do. While her childhood looked pretty darn good on the outside. Her parents were still together. They were married to each other. They lived in the same household. There were no huge screaming fights on the lawn or in the living room or anywhere else. And she had food. She had hot water. She had heating. She had clothes. She went to school clean every day with a lunch in her bag. There were after-school activities. Things looked really good. But meanwhile, her parents, Sarah and Robert, had a tumultuous relationship. They didn't really seem to like each other that much. Their relationship was marked by frequent hushed tone, like whisper fight arguments that were held behind closed doors and were never discussed with the children, and there was significant emotional volatility. Sarah, her mother, struggled with untreated mental health issues, including depression and anxiety, which often made it challenging for her to fulfill her role as a nurturing parent. As a result, young Carolina, the oldest daughter, this is part of what we do, eldest daughter here, but I think you guessed that like 200 episodes ago, Carolina stepped in to fill the gaps in the family dynamic. She believed that by being the perfectest daughter, she could bring harmony to her troubled and just really disconnected and emotionally checked out family. From a very early age, she became a family peacemaker and caretaker. Her role as the responsible and nurturing child was a classic manifestation of emotional outsourcing, specifically codependent experience. She learned to read the emotional climate of the household and would try to diffuse conflicts between her parents and siblings, etc. She took on responsibilities that were far beyond her years, such as preparing meals, ensuring her younger siblings were fed and cared for and had done their homework, and even helped her mother manage her emotional issues. Carolina's sense of self-worth became intertwined with her ability to meet the emotional and practical needs of her family. She derived validation and a sense of purpose from being the fixer within the family unit, and of course she did. She was really good at it. Her mom, while well-intentioned, was often emotionally unavailable due to her own struggles and played a role in this codependent dynamic, living out what she had experienced with her mom and she had probably experienced with hers and hers and hers for generations back. While Sarah relied on Carolina for emotional support and stability, Sarah herself was inconsistent in providing the nurturing and guidance that Carolina needed as a child. And in hindsight, Carolina can see that her mother was an emotional child herself, emotionally immature and unreliable, though always on time for pickup after school or after-school activities. Her mom always did the work, the activities, the doing of being a mother, but emotionally was not someone Carolina could truly count on to be the grown-up. This inconsistency created emotional confusion for Carolina and reinforced her sense of responsibility for her mother's well-being. She yearned for her mother's love, approval, and true care, but received mixed messages. Sarah would sometimes praise Caro for being so responsible and independent, such a big, good girl. But at other times, she would lash out in anger or withdraw emotionally, as is typical of emotionally immature parents, episode 167, leaving Carolina feeling generally confused and anxious and desperate for a sense of control and stability, which, by the way, is 1,000,000% foreshadowing on my part. Carolina's father, Robert, was a quieter presence in the house, but also contributed to the unstable environment. He struggled with his own coping mechanisms, not really having many, often turning to work as an escape from the turmoil at home, not knowing how to feel his feels, and definitely not knowing how to communicate those feels in a healthy way. This left Carolina feeling unsupported by both parents, and even more driven to maintain a sense of control and stability within the family. Again, pretty on the nose foreshadowing, my darlings. Growing up in this environment, Carolina internalized the totally understandable, logical belief that she needed to be the dependable one, the glue that held her family together, because she kind of pretty much did, especially emotionally. She developed an acute sensitivity to the emotions and needs of others, which she called being really empathetic, episode 94, which served her well in the short term and was a super brilliant childhood survival skill, but eventually became a codependent style burden when she not just sensed others' emotions and needs, she took them on as hers to manage and fix, a la savior, martyr, saint. Carolina learned early on to take on the role of the responsible and nurturing child, the adult in the room by 8 years old. She believed, and had really significant evidence to back her up, in believing that being the perfect daughter would enable her to bring harmony, aka safety via control, to her troubled family. Remember, that one that looked really great on the surface, by the way. This example is a super important one. Caro had a pretty darn good childhood by most people's standards, and definitely would not have called her childhood a traumatic or even stressful one. Likely, because she was so focused on surviving and being the rock of her family that she couldn't comprehend the impact on her sense of self and worth, her physiology, or her young nervous system. This is classic undercoupling, which is a term we're going to talk about in a super nerdtastic show very soon to come. This example is so important specifically because there wasn't violence or addiction or abuse or death of a parent or a war or any of the things that used to be associated with emotional outsourcing, with codependent, perfectionist, and people-pleasing habits. There were no instances of what we used to call big T trauma, episode 199, and instead, Caro suffered the death of her childhood by 1,000 tiny cuts. All of a sudden, a 10-year-old was her mom's therapist. The one amusing her easily annoyed dad while doing tons of chores no one asked her to do to try to make the home feel emotionally stable. Nothing acutely bad happened. Meanwhile, Carolina grew up not feeling attuned to, meaning her nervous system didn't get the co-regulation it needed. Her feelings felt like a burden to her emotionally unavailable, her self-burdened mother. Her emotionally distant father ran hot and cold, saying, "Come snuggle," one moment, and "Don't bother me, I'm listening to music," the next. So her nervous system never felt safe or secure with either parent. And so her little kiddo brain did what they do. It made her parents' shortcoming her fault. So she went into hyperdrive without even knowing it, striving to do more to try to cover up for the obvious inadequacies in her character that led her parents to not show up for her the way she needed, to not understand her, to not support her, to not ask her, "Hey baby, how are you feeling?" Let's pause and take a breath. I can imagine so many of you are nodding your heads, being like, "Yep, it me." And there's so much of my own story in this one for sure. Let's take a moment. Let's breathe a little extra compassion, curiosity, and care into our bodies. Let's soothe our inner children who may be rolling around in Memoryville, reminding them we are grown now. Yeah, that's it. Breathe into it. So, by taking on the role of the responsible and nurturing child adult, Caro hoped to bring stability and calm to her chaotic family life. However, as she grew older and entered adulthood, these patterns persisted, which they will until we learn to take our life back, and they began to take a toll on her own well-being and relationships, which makes sense. Without realizing it, she did what we do. Our nervous systems do something called reenactment, where we act out the past in an attempt to have it turn out differently. So she sought out partners and friends who needed her caregiving and problem-solving skills. She was constantly giving, and she dated people and was friends with people who were takers, who wanted someone who would give and give financially, emotionally, in terms of labor, in every way, because that's what they were used to receiving. Meanwhile, when folks tried to give to her, she had no idea how to receive. And the love and care others offers just kind of bounced off of her, never making its way in, no matter how loving folks were with her, which just strengthened the story that she was alone in the world and had to do everything herself. I mean, it wouldn't get done otherwise, right? Oof, and it definitely wouldn't get done right. This pattern of seeking out individuals who required her help also allowed her to maintain her role as a caretaker, part of her identity, and to continue to derive a sense of, identity, self-worth, and most importantly, safety from that role, because it's what her nervous system learned as the safest path through childhood. In her career, you're going to be shocked. She excelled. Folks with codependent habits, I'll do a show soon about the benefits of codependent thinking. Because, man, we really kick butt at work. All right, putting it on the list. So Carolina, of course, she excelled at work. She took on extra projects. She worked late to ensure her team's success. I mean, she really went above and beyond. At home, she meticulously managed every aspect of the household. It looked impeccable around there, from cooking nutrient-dense organic meals to overseeing her child's schoolwork and activities. Carolina's friends admired her as the reliable and selfless friend who was always there to help regardless of what was going on in her own life, which makes perfect sense because emotional outsourcing and codependent thinking is characterized by a lack of healthy boundaries, an excessive focus on others' needs, and a difficulty in recognizing and meeting one's own needs because the nervous system says, "Don't you dare." Carolina's story exemplifies these traits as she struggled to set boundaries, prioritize her well-being, and kinda didn't even realize she had needs because she had spent a lifetime pushing them down and negating them. As the years passed, her overfunctioning habits began to strain her relationships. Her partner, Sam, felt increasingly disconnected from her, as if she were the captain steering their ship while Sam was relegated to being a passive passenger, constantly failing to make or keep Caro happy no matter what Sam did. Her children, although super well cared for, missed out on quality time with their mother as she juggled her many responsibilities and prioritized the activities of being a mom over the emotional presence of being a parent, much like her own mother did. Deep inside, she believed that she had to keep moving, and she would feel a queasiness somatically in her body that she didn't understand and didn't have the tools to explore. Deep inside, she believed that she had to keep moving, and should she try to rest or even watch a show or a movie with her kids on the couch without doing 2 or 3 other things at the same time, she would feel this somatic queasiness in her body, this weird energy in her belly that she didn't understand and didn't have the tools to explore. She didn't like that uncomfortable feeling that came with rest, so she'd find something to do, to cook, to clean, to organize, to volunteer for. Prioritizing everything other than her relationships, Carolina's friendships dwindled, and she rarely had time for socializing. Carolina was not present in her life, and eventually her overfunctioning lifestyle took a toll on her physical and emotional health. She rarely, if ever, made time for self-care and neglected her own needs as her survival skill default. Stress became her constant companion, causing her nervous system to remain in the perpetual state of fight or flight that had marked her childhood. And I'll also put a little caveat here. There's definitely functional freeze in this story, and I have a whole pretty darn long, because it's really scientifically detailed show about functional freeze coming up soon. That's another one where I was like, wait, I've been talking about functional freeze for a decade. How have I not covered this? But anyway, she was in it. She was in fight or flight, functional freeze, and her body showed her all about it. She developed tension headaches and then migraines, anxious, restless insomnia, digestive issues, all physical manifestations of her overfunctioning. It was during a moment of profound exhaustion that she realized something had to give. She was so overwhelmed by feelings of resentment and emptiness. She resented Sam and her kids, her colleagues, even the dog. All things she felt like she had to deal with, manage, clean up after, not just be present with. And she began to question why her life, despite all her efforts, felt unfulfilling and stressful. Carolina's story is so helpful. And again, I bet there's at least some part of this story that you're nodding along to going, yep, it's me. So let's pause the story, back it up, and zoom out for a hot minute and get nerdtastic. So this concept of overfunctioning in the context of relationships and psychology was first introduced by Dr. Murray Bowen, MD, a psychiatrist and pioneer in the field of family systems theory. Per Dr. Bowen, overfunctioning is an unhealthy pattern of behavior in which one person in a relationship or family system takes on excessive responsibility, control, and caretaking roles, often at the expense of their own well-being and to the detriment of the relationship's balance. That interdependence we're always talking about here as the remedy to codependence. Overfunctioning is, in my opinion, also a buffer. It's a way to not pay attention to your rattled somatic experience of your life, to ignore your own discomfort or big old feelings by frenetically and often a little obsessively taking on everyone else's everything. I mean, living other people's lives for them is a really great distraction for sure, right? And I'm being serious, right? If you're trying to not feel your feels and not be present in your life, what easier than living other people's lives for them? So, again, zooming out, talk about where else overfunctioning can come from and how else it can show up in our lives. So one, let's start with the nervous system. Overfunctioning is a sympathetic place to be. Like we were talking about, it can be this thing called functional freeze that we're going to get to. And in that, it can often mask this deep underlying dorsal or freeze state. And in that, overfunctioning is super ungood for our nervous systems and our health and impacts everything in a very negative way, from our blood pressure to glucose management to mental health to digestion. 2, overfunctioning can be influenced in complex and also really simple ways by cultural and gender dynamics. In the patriarchy, there are strong expectations that humans socialized as girls overfunction in their roles as caregivers, cleaners, cooks, etc., which can absolutely establish and exacerbate this way of living. And this was definitely the case growing up Latina. The women would do 1,000,000% of the cleaning after dinner, while the dudes retired to watch football or do whatever dudes do. There can definitely be a cultural indoctrination towards overfunctioning that leads it to become this huge part of our identity. The good girl, the good wife narrative. And stepping out of it can be really, really challenging because you're stopping doing everything you were raised to believe will get you liked, approved of, told that you're good, loved. Yeah, it's a lot. So I just want to hold some space for how hard it can be to step out of this habit and to give you mad props. And yeah, I'm showing my age without saying mad props, but I did it and I shall do it again. But I want to give you mad props if you're ready to kitten step your way out of this habit, if overfunctioning is what you saw modeled for you in childhood and is part of your culture. 3, in a family setting, a parent who constantly hovers over their child, micromanaging every aspect of their life, can definitely be an overfunctioner. This behavior generally stems from their anxiety and their desire to shield their child from any potential harm. I totally get that. And it can lead the kiddo to feel smothered and incapable of making decisions on their own. When parents overfunction, it can have a lasting impact on their kids, who can grow up with a skewed understanding of responsibility and relationships, which of course has a knock-on effect into their adult relationships, like we might have seen with Caro's kids in the future if the family system hadn't gotten some support. 4, in a professional setting, an overfunctioning employee takes on all the responsibility and tasks within a team, even when it's not their role. While obviously their nervous system and their habits lead them to do this to gain approval and feel some sense of control, it can create resentment among coworkers and can definitely hinder team collaboration. Employees who overfunction may take on way too much, leading to burnout and workplace stress. As always, this can be complicated when we bring in a Marxist lens and look at class of origin, or the class you were growing up. We can also complicate this by looking at race, ability, immigration status, etc. All are reasons a person could overfunction at work, and potentially only at work, that is somewhat apart from this dynamic. 5, healthy relationships are built on collaboration and mutual support. Interdependence between autonomous adults. It's essential for all parties involved to contribute their fair share, respecting each other's strengths and limitations. An overfunctioning partner might constantly seek to solve the other's problems, making decisions on their behalf, and providing emotional support to an excessive degree. See our recent episode on advice giving without consent. While this can initially seem caring, like I just love you so much, it can really stifle the other person's autonomy and can lead to a furtherance of codependent living. This is a one-way ticket to, you guessed it, Resentmentville, USA. Such a great way to F up a relationship. Woo! It's a really good one. Be someone's mom. Okay, also we're about to talk about intimacy, but what is a quicker way to completely destroy the sexy than to effectively be another grown human person who's your partner's mom in the relationship? That sucks. I get why we do it. I totally did it. Whew, it's no good. 6, I love watching my brain just start going on a tangent, and I'm like, all right, girl, you can go for 4 seconds. I'm going to rein you in, because if not, we're going to be here for hours. 6, in friendships, an overfunctioning friend may consistently offer advice, attempt to rescue their friend from difficult situations, and makes all the plans. This so helpful behavior can undermine the friend's ability to handle their own life and create an imbalance in the friendship. See episode 110, Codependent Friendships. A client recently was telling me that she was on vacation with her husband's sister and the sister's family. And the sister made all the dinner plans, all the daytime plans, didn't check in with anyone, decided what restaurants they were going to, what hotels, what activities, way overfunctioned in this way that really made my client feel pretty lousy. Her vacation was being micromanaged by someone without her adult consent and made her feel really infantilized. It was really yucky. 7. In caregiver roles, such as taking care of an aging parent, an individual may become an overfunctioner by assuming all kinds of responsibilities without allowing the cared for person to maintain their independence. This can lead to the caregiver's burnout and the cared for person feeling wildly disempowered. Overfunctioning can have a profoundly negative impact on relationships in various ways. Resentment and power imbalances, as the person who takes on excessive responsibility often becomes the decision maker, as recently discussed. And 2, that can for sure lead to a lack of intimacy. When one person is constantly in a caretaker role, there may be little room for vulnerability and sharing of emotions, which is crucial for deep connections. 3, codependency. Overfunctioning can contribute to codependent thinking, as it is more classically defined, in which it's called codependency, where one person relies heavily on the other for their emotional, physical, financial well-being and functioning. This dependency can be suffocating and can prevent both individuals from growing independently, which brings us to 4, stifled growth. The person on the receiving end of overfunctioning may not develop essential life skills and may struggle with personal growth and self-confidence because they're not given the opportunity to learn from their mistakes and experiences. 5, lack of trust. The person who is overfunctioning may not trust the other person to handle their responsibilities, leading to a lack of confidence in the other person's own abilities because this person they love doesn't trust them to do the most basic of basic. 6, those who overfunction may lose their sense of self as they become overly focused on meeting the needs and expectations of others. This can result in a loss of personal identity and fulfillment, and of course, just strengthens the old emotional outsourcing. 7, constantly juggling multiple roles and responsibilities without adequate self-care can lead to physical and emotional exhaustion. 8, overfunctioning can inadvertently enable unhealthy behavior in the other person. For example, if a parent constantly cleans up after their adult child, the child may not take responsibility for their actions and continue to rely on their parent and is likely to put their partner in that parent role. I had an ex like this who would say straight up that they didn't have to clean up after themselves ever because, and I doth quote, Someone else always has and always will do it for me. Wild, right? And this was like a 30-something-year-old grown up with a professional degree. I don't have to clean up because someone else will always do it for me. Wild, right? They put me in the mom role. I stepped right into it. It was a hot mess, ended poorly. 9, communication breakdown. When one person is doing all the decision making, the other person is obviously left feeling unheard and unimportant. 10, overfunctioning can set unrealistic expectations for both parties involved. The overfunctioner may expect constant appreciation and recognition, while the other person may feel pressure to meet those expectations and to be a walking praise machine. 11, ultimately, overfunctioning can lead to the deterioration of a relationship. The strain and imbalance created by overfunctioning can become so overwhelming that it becomes challenging to maintain a healthy, fulfilling connection. Wow, so that was a massive helping of, with a side of, oh my God, I was just trying to get through. Why are you calling me out? So what's this girl to do? Let's talk remedies. First, if you're seeing yourself or someone you love in this, as always, we start with the 3 C's: compassion, curiosity, care. Pause to remember that it makes sense that you think, feel, and act this way. Of course it does. It's a survival skill. It makes sense. Beating you up for doing it gets you absolutely, exactly nowhere. My darling, my sweet, tender ravioli, you can't heal hurt with more hurt. So please stop being mean to you. And remember to love up on the little kid inside you who's just trying to feel less scared in the world. We need to unpack the many layers of our overfunctioning behavior if we're to get to the other side. And in Anchored, my 6-month program, we bring in somatic or body-based nervous system resetting modalities along with thought work, which helps us to change our automatic thinking patterns from childhood so we can evolve and mature into more adult ways of thinking about our relationship to doing versus being, episode 21, and to our need to overfunction for those around us as a way to find safety. To step away from the overfunctioning habit, we need that self-awareness where we recognize the signs of overfunctioning and acknowledge that it's not sustainable. And I think what's really important is that we need to actively decide that it's not something that serves us. It's not something we want to do. Because when I was deep inside it, I thought I was enjoying it. And it's just me. It's just who I am. I'm just like this whirling dervish of activity. Oh, I love doing things for others. And I did and I do. I am a generous person. I love doing stuff for others. But now I know how to give from my overflow and not pour from an empty cup. Right? And I was doing it without being intentional. We've talked 400 million episodes of the importance of intention. Episode 84, for example, living with intention comes to mind. I was not in intention, right? So we need to step into intentionality and ask ourselves, do I want to keep doing this? And I, for one, did not. From there, we need to learn to say no. And I know it's so hard. We want to people please. We want the people to be pleased with us. And they're not going to be when we stop. Facts, right? Just facts. But establishing boundaries prioritizes your well-being, and remember what boundaries are. They're resentment prevention. They're community care. So learning to say no by supporting your nervous system to find more ease around no, vital. Absolutely vital. And in that, we need to learn the importance, and this is going to be challenging too, to prioritize self-care practices such as mindfulness, meditation, movement, and community care practices, like meeting with others and breaking the silence around overfunctioning and talking to your friends. Because your friends are doing this too, and they're doing it alone, and they're feeling alone, and we need to talk to each other. Finally, we need to challenge gender roles. Question societal expectations and norms that are contributing to overfunctioning, feeling like part of our DNA as humans socialized as women, which is just completely garbage. Carolina finally told a trusted friend how she was feeling, and her friend sent her to me, which was quite the honor. In our first session, I helped her to understand how her child experiences had shaped her overfunctioning tendencies and the ways this pattern was affecting her in every area of life. We used somatic techniques to help her connect with her body and release the accumulated tension, stress, and bracing in her system. She learned to recognize the physical sensations associated with her overfunctioning, such as tightness in her chest and shoulders or a pit in her stomach, and these became the litmus tests that would allow her through her body to say, hey, I think I'm starting to do that overfunctioning thing again. Let me go take a moment and take a breath, come back to intention and presence, and decide if I do or do not want to continue to do this. Together, we worked on setting boundaries, practicing self-compassion, and gradually letting go of the need to control everything by focusing on trusting herself to be chill with things, even if they're only 97.84% perfect. And that was a stretch. The whole concept of B+ work, it took us a while to get Carolina from A+ to A-. She also got to learn to trust that others will change their circumstances if they want to, and it's not her job to infantilize others and make decisions for them and do everything for them. So, for example, if her partner doesn't think the kitchen is clean enough, then Sam can just clean it. And she just trusts Sam to actually do it instead of preemptively, paternalistically doing it for them. Carolina's transformation was gradual and profound. Slowly but surely, she started taking time for herself, just a minute a day. She started re-engaging in activities she had loved as a young person and prioritized self-care with ever less guilt. I didn't say without guilt, with ever less guilt. As she let go of the reins at work and at home, she noticed a significant shift in her relationships. Her marriage with Sam blossomed as they began to share responsibilities and communicate more openly, as she started to really trust Sam and was able to begin to receive love from them. Carolina's children felt closer to her as she spent quality time with them rather than just managing their schedules and constantly doing for them. Her friendships rekindled as she learned to lean on her friends for support and companionship, and slowly with time was able to be vulnerable and open with them and to trust them to set healthy boundaries with her. Her career didn't suffer either. In fact, her ability to delegate and trust her team improved her overall efficiency and morale. She was no longer the overburdened hero. Instead, she became a collaborative and empowering leader. With the help of somatic coaching, she reconnected with her body, learned to set boundaries, and embraced a more balanced and fulfilling life. Her story serves as a powerful reminder that healing and transformation are possible, even in the face of deeply ingrained patterns, and that by addressing overfunctioning, folks like you and me can lead healthier, happier lives and can cultivate more meaningful relationships. Carolina's journey from overfunctioning to self-compassion was a transformative one. And it took a lot of time at task. It anchored a lot of getting coached, a lot of leaning on the community, and a lot of tears. It's not easy, and I will testify to that. And it is 1,000,000,000,000,000% worth it to live an interdependent life, where you trust the people you love to take care of themselves. You trust them and allow them to take care of you. You do beautiful things to show love and care to those you love. And you let the love in too. Oh, my beauties. Thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. Thank you, as always, for tuning in to Feminist Wellness. I love making this show for you. So thank you for listening in. I really appreciate it. Once again, I will ask you for a rating, review, follow, or subscribe and share on social. Let's get the word out. Let's do it. All right, my beauties, let's do what we do. Gentle hand on your heart should you feel so moved. And remember, you are safe. You are held. You are loved. And when one of us heals, we help heal the world. Be well, my beauties. I'll talk to you soon. Thank you for listening to this episode of Feminist Wellness. If you want to learn more all about somatics, what the heck that word means and why it matters for your life, head on over to victoriaalbina.com/somatics webinar for a free webinar all about it. Have a beautiful day, my darling, and I'll see you next week. Ciao!